I mentioned in the last video that the Vanyar and Noldor made it to Amon, but it wasn't as simple as it might have seemed. First, the Vanyar and the Noldor make it to the far western shores of Beleriand, and there the elves are kind of scared of the ocean, but then Ulmo comes and talks to them and they're like, hey, actually the sea is pretty cool, and they agree to cross it. So Ulmo lifts an island up and ferries the Vanyar and the Noldor across the sea, and they at last make it to Amon. So as you may recall, the Teleri were all dilly-dallying along the way, and by the time they made it to the ocean, Ulmo and the other elves were all gone. So they're kind of sad because all their friends left them behind, but they start living there on the shores of the sea. And Ase, one of Ulmo's Maiar that you might remember from earlier, he visits them and makes friends with them, and they forever after love the sea. For a long time they're all staying there, but Finwë, king of the Noldor, is like, hey, I miss my friends, so he asks Ulmo to bring them to Amon. Ulmo does so, but Ase is sad and he convinces some of them to stay behind. Those that do are known as the Falathrim, and Círdan the Shipwright rules them. So Ulmo takes King Olwe and all the people who are willing to go off to Amon, and their island is floating across the ocean, but Ase follows along and he's like, please, I want to stay close to my friends, because he never leaves the ocean. And Ulmo's like, fine, I didn't really want the elves to go to Amon anyway. And he roots the island there in the middle of the ocean, in between Middle-earth and Amon. This island became known as Tol Eressëa, the Lonely Isle, and because of the distance between the Teleri and the other elves, they developed a different language, although they remained friends. But now in Amon, the Valar built a place for the elves to live. There are these giant mountains surrounding Valinor to guard it from Melkor, but the Valar split the mountains and made a valley so that the elves could still see the stars and look upon the ocean. In the valley they raised a green hill, and apparently Tolkien thought it was a great idea to name it after a fish, but it was called Tuna, and the elves built a beautiful city called Tirion. The Vanyar were Manwë and Varda's favorite elves, but the Noldor were most loved by Aule, who taught them many things. The Noldor then became great craftsmen, both of word and of physical objects. As I said before, the Noldor are the important ones, so prepare to have a bunch of names and relationships dumped on you, like now. Finwë was king of the Noldor, and his sons were Feanor, Fingolfin, and Finarfin. Feanor was very passionate and the most skilled, Fingolfin was the strongest and the most valiant, and Finarfin was the fairest and the wisest. Feanor had 7 sons for some unknown reason, and they were Maethros the Tall, Maglor the Great Singer, Caligorm the Fair, Caranthir the Dark, Curufin the Crafty, and Amrod and Amras, who weren't special at all other than that they were identical twins and went hunting, but so did Caligorm, and he's more important. Fingolfin had 2 sons, Fingon and Turgon, who both later became great kings. His daughter was Erethel, an adventurous lady who was very close with Feanor's sons. Finarfin's sons were Finrod, Orodreth, Angrod, and Aegnor, who were all as close as brothers with Fingolfin's sons. And of course, Finarfin also had a daughter, Galadriel. Meanwhile, the Teleri are still off on their island, but they can see Amon in the distance and they really want to go there. So Ase reluctantly teaches them how to build ships, and they set sail and land at Amon. They then can visit Tirion as they wish, but they build their own city, Alcalande, on the seashore. At the same time, the Vanyar leave Tirion behind to stay in Valinor forever, and Tirion becomes a city solely of the Noldor. Speaking of the Noldor, it's time to tell their stories. So at this point in time, everything is awesome. All 3 kindreds of the elves are in Amon, and Melkor is chained up, and the best years of everyone's lives happen, whether they realized it or not. King Finwë fell in love with and married Miriel, and she bore him his first son, Feanor. At first everything is great, but Miriel poured so much of her spirit into Feanor that she became spent and eventually passed away. Finwë is naturally heartbroken, but soon he moves on and gives all his attention to his son. Feanor grows up to be the most skilled of all the Noldor, and he makes all kinds of beautiful things, but man if he is not stubborn and proud. He marries Nerdanel, a woman as strong-willed as he is, but eventually she gives up and they never talk anymore. But all 7 of those sons she had were all extremely loyal to their dad, so I guess their relationship didn't affect their kids too much. Now as time went on, Finwë took a second wife, Indis, and she gave birth to Fingolfin and Finarfin. Finwë truly loved his second wife and his later sons, but Feanor was always his favorite. Feanor, on the other hand, did not like at all that his father remarried and had more sons, so he did pretty much everything he could to ignore his new family. Meanwhile, Melkor is coming to the end of the time appointed for his imprisonment, so he's taken out and presented before Manwë to be judged again. Melkor sees all the great stuff the Valar have done, and he sees the elves, and he's super jealous, but of course he hides that and pretends that he's changed his ways. So the Valar let him go on parole here in Valinor, and for a while everyone begins to think, hey, maybe he has changed, but Ulmo and Tolkas aren't buying it. Nevertheless, they obey Manwë's judgment, and for a long time Melkor dwelt there among the Valar and the Maiar and the elves, and he actually helped them out. But it all went downhill real fast, as you'll find out in the next video.